I always thought about when AI came along that it should always be about, how can we do something more efficient? But what we at Carta decided is that that's not actually how you can really maximize the value of AI. It's what couldn't you do before that you can do now with AI? What can we help our clients do now that we couldn't do without AI?
Welcome to the Fund AI Pod. We've been speaking a lot about the investments in AI, and a big part of that is PE. We know Waltz is a big player in the AI space, and a big supporter and service provider to the alternative space is Carta. And today I have a special guest with me, Edwin Chan. Edwin, thank you and welcome to the pod.
No, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Excited to be here.
Excellent. Why don't we start off with you telling the audience a bit about yourself and your career to date?
Yeah, sure. So I've spent the past 25 years all in the alternative investment space. I am unfortunately a chartered accountant by profession, having trained with PwC in London. And I moved around a bit. I started in hedge funds, moved to Bermuda, moved to Hong Kong with HSBC, focusing again on hedge funds. Before I kind of saw the light and I saw that private markets, i.e. PE, is where the economy is going. And I focused a lot more into that. And my last major fund accounting role was a global head of fund accounting at Wells Fargo. About 400 fund accountants globally, spread in Asia, Europe, and in the US as well. And then into a more commercial space, where I was head of business development for Northern Trust, where you and I work together, as well as a host of other kind of companies in the asset servicing space. And right now, I'm the managing director for Europe and the UK for Carta. And my main focus is to make sure that our product is being understood and used by the ecosystem. And when I say our products, we have so many different products, and I'm sure we can dive a little bit more into it a little bit later on. But really, our whole ethos is to connect all the different components of the ecosystem, all the way from portfolio companies to the funds to the LPs, and to have one single source of data that hopefully will benefit the ecosystem to drive less friction when it comes to investing, both for GP and also for the LP.
Excellent. So let's double click into that. We mentioned Carta's known in the PE space. You spoke briefly about the vision. But for those that aren't familiar, who is Carta? What do they do? What are their core products? What are their core services?
Of course. So we started about 12 years ago in Silicon Valley in California. And our founder, Henry Ward, decided that there is nothing that is similar to the capital markets for private companies, i.e. how do you actually track who owns the equity in private companies? So we built a core software surrounding that ecosystem. And right now we've got about 50,000 companies. They all track the actual equity that's held by the employees, investors, and the GPs within that private company. And as part of that journey, we realized that there's only one part of the infrastructure. The next part really is about, well, how do the actual GPs track their ownership of all the different portfolio companies that they have? And so we moved into fund administration. And then I guess the third part of the equation is the LPs. They are the ones that ultimately invest in both the portfolio companies and the funds. So we now have a product that helps LPs understand and analyze their portfolios at that level. So if I think about it, it's about having the whole chain of infrastructure, the front office, the middle office, and the back office, to use what is perhaps a terminology that's more understood by the capital market space. And on the front office space, we do valuations, we do portfolio analytics, portfolio forecasting. All the information that travels all the way through the infrastructure to what we call the middle office, where we've got tax reporting, we've got valuation, we've got all the various kind of regulatory reporting is required. And then we've got a fund accounting module that drags all the information from the core assets that's being held by the fund all the way through the fund to provide financial reporting, LP reporting, and LP analytics.
Excellent. And so you started with effectively the cap table. Would that be fair?
Yes.
And was that something that historically owners would have just maintained in a spreadsheet or some very basic software? Is that where it evolved from?
Well, as I mentioned, Ian, I'm an accountant by profession. So even though now I run the whole region, I still have that mindset of Excel spreadsheets. And to be frank, I still use Excel spreadsheets, but not as much as I used to in the past. So yes, it was all Excel based. And really what Carta was started off from is really taking an Excel problem and turning it into software. And right now, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it a little bit later on with AI, it's really come to fruition where it's not just Excel anymore. It's documents, photos, structure charts, taking all of that and turning into software.
Tell me, you've obviously worked at some asset services. They've come from a long history of technology they've been around. So their tech stack may not be as new or developed as Carta, whereas you've got the benefits of both being a newer company, so you're able to leverage newer technology, but also grown out of Silicon Valley, which everyone knows is the center of the universe from a tech perspective. Walk us through a bit about your tech stack, how much you build yourself, how you're able to move forward with new technologies, innovate quickly in an agile way. How do you approach the tech stack and the tech development of your platform?
I think it's twofold. The first is integration. The second is connectiveness. So when it comes to integration, we just acquired two companies this year. One is for our LP portfolio analytics tool, and integration is key for us to make sure that's plugged into our ecosystem directly and as soon as possible. So we build our own software. We have over 400 software engineers, and their main focus is to make sure that the information flows. I think if the information doesn't flow, whether it's new technology or legacy, then the value of the information decreases as you continue the different nodes along the chain. The second part is connectiveness, because even though we can build as much as we possibly can, there are other providers out there, whether it's data, whether it's banking. Those kind of ecosystems require connectedness to us. So without that connectivity, that ecosystem that we build, again, the value decreases because the information is being handed over node after node without actual integration. So connecting outwards, as well as integrating ourselves, is key for us to actually benefit the ecosystem. Because otherwise, I'll give you a perfect example. If you're trying to send a money movement, we have to be on the banking platform. But what does that mean? How do we connect that banking platform so that our clients and our customers benefits from not having to be held down by one single bank, not being held down by one single banking platform? So connecting as wide as possible externally is very important to us.
And you touched on a point that I've gone through in a few paper reviews, that to have good products, data products, be able to deliver value to your clients and have an efficient operating model, you've got to have quality data and quality data integration. So what is the approach you have around your data governance and ensuring your data is as clean as possible for your end users?
Again, thinking back to my career in 25 years, a lot of Excel spreadsheets, but also a lot of double entry. And when I say double entry, I don't mean in an accounting point of view, literally putting the same information into multiple systems. So I love this ethos that our Chief Product Officer, Prashadi, has, which is that never enter data twice. And that is how we build software. Once you entered it once, it should flow to all the different tenants of the ecosystem that we've built, but also externally again to other providers out there. So never enter data twice.
Single source of truth.
Well, I say that, but I've worked at other places. I'm not going to name names, obviously, Ian, where the single source of truth is there, but there are still multiple entries. And I'll give you one perfect example, right? Back in the day, I was doing hedge funds. A trader can put a trade into, let's say, Bloomberg Terminal. They execute a trade that goes to the middle office. Fine. But there's a back office, i.e. the product controllers. Do they actually have the same information, or is it being entered again? And typically, it's entered again via the reconciliation tool. So if there is a manual entry, there is still that step change from one system to another. And that's what we're trying to build for the private equity and the VC space in, which is never having that step over where even though you think you entered it once, in effect, a system will enter again into a different system. That in itself is actually double entry.
And so instead you have it stored once and APIs or tools ping the same single source of data as opposed to replicating it across different data sets.
And if I can say something that might shock a lot of listeners, is that we can provide actual live daily P&L if the client really wants it. Now, for most PE managers, they don't want that. They don't want daily P&L, nor would they want to give that to their LPs either. But because our system is live, it always goes back to the original source and then recalculates everything as you ask for the reporting. So therefore, there's never a report that's not coming from the source data itself. Our reports are not repositories of dead information. Our reports are live, and that's again because we built it in a way that allows a single source of truth, that initial entry, to always be what feeds the rest of the ecosystem.
That's an interesting one because from my experience, if you look at, say, a fund that has a NAV, I've seen in service providers where they effectively have two lens. You have a live IBOR or ABOR where, like you said, it generates a valuation or a NAV or a P&L with everything that's been updated as is. But then if you were to think about a NAV for a fund that just finished October, you lock the books, you generate a NAV, you send that out to your LPs saying, this is what we did. But then in November, you find that there was an expense missed for October. So you go back and you plug it. Now, a true P&L would take that, flow it through, update, and now you've got a live. But if you were to run that as of 30th of October, it wouldn't align with the NAV because it's now in the books, but it wasn't at the time of the NAV. So typically you would see it migrated across to the November NAV. So it's all captured. So how do you tackle that mismatch in timing of a NAV's a snap versus live P&L, which is more of a middle office function?
Yeah. The way I think about it and the way we think about it is twofold. One is date stamp, that's important. It's having that audit trail of when an entry actually enters into the system. The second is bifurcating the two that a lot of asset services still do, is IBOR and ABOR. Our schedule of investments, that schedule of investments should be, once you lock on the valuation, that is that. That's what's been reported to the LPs. And the LPs ultimately make decisions of their schedule of investments. The accounting entries that occur, like you said, like expense payments, that's more, dare I say it, for accounting purposes, which for the LPs themselves are not as important as the IBOR. So when we update the valuation of portfolio company, if that cap tables on Carta that flows directly all the way through, even if there are changes in the accounting entries, expenses, etc., that schedule of investments, SOI, remains static. Now, do we have clients that want to go backwards and want to update a valuation? Potentially. But again, that's where the date stamp comes in. Having that audit trail that every entry, every data point has a date stamp on it. It not only helps us to bifurcate the two, IBOR and ABOR, it also obviously helps the auditors as well.
Very good. So it sounds as if you've got your data governance, data structure controls in place. That should allow you then to effectively have some efficient automation workflows and therefore also be able to leverage AI with the quality data you have. What automation and AI initiatives has Carta undertaken so far?
Coming from a very back office, middle office career myself, I always thought about when AI came along, that it should always be about, how can we do something more efficient? Or how can we do something more effectively? But what we at Carta have decided is that that's not actually how you can really maximize the value of AI. It's what couldn't you do before that you can do now with AI? That is our ethos. And it's always external. What can we help our clients do now that we couldn't do without AI? I'll give you an example, which is using LLM. Again, as accountants, as CFOs, a lot of CFOs love to do, can I extract the data? Can I do a pivot table in Excel? Can I do this to analyze the information that you have? And we say, of course you can. But what if there's a better tool because of AI? What if I tell you that you can type in, what is my unrealized gain from last quarter from Europe versus Asia? And it gives you that answer real time in a language that you understand. That is something that is an example that we're building right now. That kind of being able to query the data with natural language without having to pivot and filter and sort information to find out what the information is. I have lots of different examples here, not to share more on this topic, but that's how we think about it. What can we do now that we couldn't have done without AI?
No, that's a great example. And it's one I do encourage other managers and service providers to look at is easier access to information rather than going in and running old school static reports, etc. The one area out of that does need to be addressed is the concern around governance, auditability, etc., to ensure that when a LP is querying about their investments, the data doesn't accidentally pull in another investor's data and you have a data privacy incident. Have you given any thought into how you address that and silo it and ensure you're looking after the EU AI requirements, EU AI Act?
Yeah, of course, Ian. I think one of the first things that GDPR has been around, it sounds like a long time, but it hasn't been around for that long. But GDPR is a big portion of our cybersecurity to make sure that information are not shared with people that they shouldn't get access to. And I think it's about how the LP access information. So in the past, a lot of the LPs were getting PDFs being emailed to them and then having a password or a password for a login. But again, we offer both, best of both worlds in a way. We always have LPs that are, dare I say, old school. You know, they still love the PDFs. We don't get asked for facts anymore, thank God. I remember we used to fax capital statements to LPs. But even with that, that is an area that we focus on to make sure that each LP have their own, basically an instance of the login. And the login is two-factor authentication. And they get an email saying, please log in via this link, and then they log in. So therefore, we've valued security, but we also value the verification of what data is available. So for our GPs, for example, they can set specific settings within our software to allow, let's say, the co-investment LPs more information than the commingled fund LPs. Each of those are separate, and the amount of information shared is dictated by what the GPs want. So what we're saying is that you can have full transparency, but you still can have control over how transparent you become.
Excellent. So this podcast is all about inspiring others in the industry with real life AI examples. And you gave us a great one there. You mentioned there's a few others, so perhaps we could walk through some that you think are relevant to the industry or good use cases that you've implemented within Carta. And maybe we could split them into two. You mentioned the best value is those that help the external, so your clients and their investors. But I'd also be curious to see if you've got any internally that have helped with your team around knowledge or efficiency or value creation, etc.
Structure charts. I'm sure you and I have done a lot of looking at structure charts, even building structure charts for our clients. But again, what we've done is that rather than having just a visual chart of this fund has these two feeders, these feeders have these SPVs, etc., we built from the other way around. And again, without AI, without LLM, we could not have done that, which is based on the underlying data, we can rebuild actual structure chart that's actually live. So when you click onto the SPV, when you click onto the fund, it drills back down and shows you all the accounting information, the scheduled investments, which LPs holdings are in that specific fund. Again, live because we're using LLM, but also data analysis and AI to drag the information up from the bottom. Internal applications, and I love this one because it's used by so many of our functions, including HR, finance, and our delivery team, which is using Notebook LM. A lot of asset servicing companies know that they have so many procedures. They got procedure for TA, a procedure for the fund accounting team, a separate procedure for the financial statements team. All those disparate kind of policies and procedures live on different servers, different files. Again, with Notebook LM, we can then query because we place all the policies in one place. You query it and ask, how often should we review KYC? How many levels of, shall we say, review must a NAV go through before we release it to clients? So that everyone's looking at the same core information and everyone can operate then, whether you're HR, finance, delivery, of the same set of policies and procedures.
I'm glad you brought that up because effectively a knowledge management agent that's trained on your procedures and policies, I think that should be one of the first use cases any firm can look at because everyone has policies and procedures. And it's a great way to have all that information centralized and available for all employees.
And I think also an additional part of it is, again, what AI can allow us to do that we couldn't have done before. Version control, procedures change over time. There'll be one every 6 months, every year, it gets updated. But now with LLM, you can query it. What parts of the procedure has changed over the past year? Have we added additional controls? By being able to query the versions as well, really adds another layer of usability to the actual AI agent itself.
So you've given a lot of examples of AI being rolled out. How has Carta approached the culture and learning, i.e., ensuring that your staff are educated, that they're using it, you're getting the most out of it, but also then people are bringing ideas to the table of use cases where you could apply it even further?
I think it's twofold. The first is that it has to come from the top. If I don't use AI, if I don't show people using AI, other people will not adopt AI for the fear that, well, if the senior people are not that focused on it, why should I? It is a new tool. It's a new technical skill that unfortunately a lot of people are still scared of. So having the leaders in place that implement it for themselves will really influence the more junior staff. The second thing is for us, so we do a lot of workshop. We have an AI club, for example, in Europe, where we run it every 2 weeks, where again, irrespective of whether you're in HR, in finance, in compliance, or in accounting, people come with ideas, and we always ask them, please, when you come to the AI club, we do not need a fully fleshed out idea. The whole point about having all of us together during the AI club is to make sure that we can share knowledge, we can share learnings, and also more importantly, share mistakes that we've made so that we can learn from each other. So having those two things, leaders who really, really drive AI usage because they use it themselves, and then having a forum that allows people to come without completely sorted out and, things that work 100% AI agents, that will really help people adopt AI more inclusively across the board.
It's interesting on those two you've brought up. In episode 5 of this podcast, I reviewed a Microsoft paper that looked at an AI learning culture. And those two were 2 of the 7 that are needed for success in generating an AI learning culture. So you've helped reinforce that. So, well done there. This episode is brought to you by my own company, Zentia. Zentia is an AI and automation company that has 3 core offerings. First, consulting to help identify and map out AI and automation opportunities for your firm. 2, we can either build or co-build with your team those agentic solutions. And 3, prepackaged agents that are ready to be configured and deployed to your environment. Agents such as knowledge management agents, RFP agents, FOBO Rec Agents, and our upcoming Request AI, a requirements and project management agent. To learn more, please visit our website, www.zentia.io. That's zentia.io, or contact me on LinkedIn. There's a well-cited paper by MIT that 95% of AI rollouts have failed. That may be a bit dated now. I think people have learnt from it. But when it comes to evaluating your ROI on these AI use cases, workflows, how does Carta approach it? What do you look at? What are you measuring? And is there a process that it goes through from idea generation to build to post-deployment evaluation?
The biggest metric for us when it comes to success is adoption. How many of our clients adopts the AI tool that we created for them? And we track that very, very closely. I'll give you one example, Ian. We built a KYC agent to help with analyzing LP KYC. Now, we have very high adoption in Europe, and we track the adoption to determine whether that tool is successful or not. Now, the reasons are quite varied why one area we have higher adoption than others. In Europe, I think the adoption is because there's more complicated KYC requirements. People are so sick and tired of spending weeks sending 1 million documents, having them bounce back. It's not been dated, it's not updated correctly, it hasn't been signed. So the adoption is very, very high for us in Europe for our KYC tool. But to get them to adopt that kind of AI technology on the KYC part, it's about information. It's about education. Why is it quicker? Why is it more robust? We're spending a lot more time now with our clients to educate them why it's better to have a KYC tool that's driven by AI to generate the closings and doing the first close quicker. I think it's the articulation of the benefits. Internally for us, AI adoption, for us to measure it, is about what do we spend the time on before and what we're spending the time on now. Again, it's not about shortening the time. It's not about just being more efficient, because that is only the first step of AI. The second step of AI is what we spend the time that we had been doing something that was manual on now that's more productive, not on that same process. So that's how we measure success internally.
And that touches on a point that a lot in the industry have feared, that AI is very focused on efficiency, which will lead to redundancies. And I do think you make a good point that, yes, there will be efficiencies, and that is some of the lower hanging fruits that firms are targeting. But what we're seeing a lot of is firms using that free time for more value added functions, as you mentioned there as well. Would it be fair to say that's what you're seeing in your side, as in it either frees up capacity to keep growing with the same resources, and or then spend more time thinking on what client features could we add, or how could we do more value generation activities?
If I look at this, which is, let's use tax reporting as an example, Ian. Schedule K1. I'm sure every listener is very familiar with how long that usually takes and how costly it has become to do a correct Schedule K1 for the LPs to file to the US. For us, again, it wasn't just about shortening the amount of time we have. We got 95% of K1s out by the first week of February, which for most people is probably unheard of. Again, if we shorten the time to do the K1s that quickly, what else are we getting the staff to do? Well, there's other parts of it. There are other kind of tax reporting that's required. So we can add more products to help our clients, because that team that's doing what traditionally would have taken 3 to 4 months to do, 1 month. So the additional expertise that we can gain on doing, let's say, UK tax reporting, or whether we do Luxembourg tax reporting, that is a product that we can now offer or think about offering clients, because we shorten the time we do Schedule K1s for the US tax reporting. So doubling down on the expertise that people have built up on one specific area by shortening the time they spend on doing that work means that we can elevate their knowledge, but also elevate what we could provide to our clients by offering a different type of tax reporting to our clients.
And one of the biggest areas AI has seen the benefits has been in coding. And with Carta being based in Silicon Valley, I imagine you've got a very tech ethos. Are you using these Copilot or coding tools within Carta for your own tech development? And if so, what are those tools that the team are using?
So a lot of us use Vibe coding, and it's a tool that a lot of the other people use. And there's a kind of a running joke, even though it's probably 99% serious, in that everyone in Carta is our coder. I think those tools out there, the AI tools to help us to code, has really changed and elevated our productivity. Again, not just about being able to just do things faster. It frees up your brain space. It frees up your bandwidth to think, well, what else can we create to help our clients? What else will our clients need? And spend more time with our clients to understand their needs. Because I think it's a two-way conversation here. Building a software is not so much, oh, let's build something that we think will benefit the clients. It's what we hear from the clients. It's about what they think will help them. But again, I would challenge a lot of clients to think more holistically, how they think the past data structure and the past infrastructure is coming up to the end of its life for pretty much every GP out there. A lot of the GPs that we talk to now have a chief digital officer, or they're hiring a chief technology officer. Well, why are they doing that? And that's because they need to start thinking outside the box now. They need to start thinking that data can actually be an alpha generating tool for them, rather than just a back end, oh, let's store it, let's figure out how to use it later on. It's a forward thinking thing where you look at data to actually generate alpha. So we see a lot of GPs now using the data storage, but also the data analytics tool in a way that helps their investment team be the first of the pack. Who can be the first to a deal? Who can actually figure out, is it just a this kind of cash flow that we should look at when it comes to valuation, or are there other quantitative but also qualitative aspects of a portfolio company that they need to generate to make sure that investment teams are aware of it? If I give you one good example, Ian, a lot of GPs do these kind of tear sheets for their LPs on a quarterly basis, explaining from a quantitative but also from a qualitative perspective how they think about portfolio company. Well, every quarter an LP receives that, and every quarter an LP, the committee, the investment committee will look at that and think, okay, that makes sense. But what if you have 2 years worth of these kind of tear sheets, and you can ask an AI agent to ask, what is the context, and also what is the wording and the sentiment of each of those tear sheets? Has that become overly positive? And then check it back to the exit value when they exit portfolio company to see, well, this GP always is very optimistic. This GP is always quite pessimistic. This GP is very neutral, again, based on the sentiment written on the words of the tear sheet. That kind of tool is not just about data anymore. It's about making an alpha generating investment decision.
I like the forward-thinking application there. And I guess that goes to my next question. As you look forward a few years, what AI-driven capabilities do you think will come into the PE space?
One is the one I mentioned about that sentiment. But again, that is, at the moment, a lot of the GPs I talk to are using it internally. They're not dragging in external information, which is, what's the macroeconomic environment looking in that region, in that country? Government policies that will influence how we impact portfolio companies. All that information is out there, but at the moment, you can pay 100 analysts to troll through all the information, and you still can't come to a decision because there's too many disparate data points. AI can drag all the information in for you, make informed decision along the way to make sure that you are, as a GP, have the right information, again, both from a qualitative and also quantitative perspective. You have the data points, great. But what are the words that's been used by politicians? What are the words being used by the CEO of that company? What are the words being used by the regulator to figure out the sentiment and the context with which you can now view the data in a new light?
We've been diving into your technology benefits to the PE industry and how you've expanded across now the front, middle, and back. How has connecting that technology actually driven benefits for the entire ecosystem and stakeholders within that industry?
It's about joining the teams together within the GPs itself in. Historically, a lot of GPs have investment teams. They've got a deal team, they've got a valuation team, they've got an accounting team, they've got a cash management team. How do they all speak the same language, i.e. have the same data sets to make decision of? I'll give you one actual example in, which is that if I, as a GP CFO, want to figure out how much carried interest will be generated this year for our employees, well, what will happen in the past is that CFO has gone to the investment team, asked for the portfolio company valuations. Then they're to calculate the waterfall at the portfolio company level. Then they're going to feed that into the fund accounting system, which they don't hold because they're with the fund administrator. Ask the fund administrator to give me the valuation for the fund, and then decipher how much of that goes to the co-investment vehicle or the carry vehicle. And then ask the HR team within the GP, okay, how much of our employees own of each of these carry? That, in my mind, is bonkers. How much work that CFO has to do, but also how much time that CFO is wasting doing work that can be done with just one single platform. So on Carta, for example, with the CFO asking the same question, how much carry will my employees get this year? The portfolio company cap tables are on our software, so therefore that then generates a valuation. That valuation then automatically fed into a waterfall tool that we built, again, using LLM by reading the relevant sales and purchase agreements. The waterfall then generates, okay, the fund A gets this much in value if the value of that portfolio goes to X. Fund B co-invest vehicle gets different values. That again then is fed directly into our own fund accounting engine. That general ledger then spits out the information for the carry vehicle, which also holds the information about each employees. So the GP CFO can now speak the same language. He or she doesn't have to go ask disparate teams unfortunately, both internally and also the fund administrator to get the information. Click of a button. I know oversimplifying it. I know we don't have time for a demo, but it is a click of a button. Funny enough, we have an offsite every year where we get all the senior executives and senior leaders to actually do this kind of exercise, to understand how technology works, to understand how software works. And as an ex-CFO for a hedge fund and PE manager myself, had I had this tool, I could have spent so much more time on helping the front office team understand, well, how's the leverage affecting the portfolio company? I can have the front office team understand, well, if you exit now, how will it impact your other portfolio companies, rather than gathering information for every single team within the GP itself.
Great use cases there. And I'd love to know what the feedback has been from your clients. Obviously positive, but what has the adoption looked like? And then what has been the broad themes around the feedback that you have received on some of these AI enhanced tools?
I think it's threefold. You get the ones clients that think, please keep on building, build more, build more, build more. We'll take it all. We'll take it all. Those are the clients that obviously we're very happy with. The other kind of clients, the second kind of clients, are the ones that have fear. Well, if I change this, I've got to change that. If I change this interface, I've got to change that. For those kind of clients, our ethos is that let's work through it together. We're not saying that we're going to solve all your problems on day one, but let's work through it together so that we can solve it for you in the medium term by figuring out which part of their interfaces requires our input, which part should be on our platform, and which part they need to build externally. So that kind of collaborative way of thinking is what gets those clients over the hump. And the third ones are inertia. I've built everything now. I don't want to change anything. And our question to that CFO and to the GP is, how long can that last? How long can that last for you to continue to operate based on what's happening within the PE space, which is compression on fees, lower exit values, more competitiveness when it comes to acquisitions from other GPs, and obviously the most important thing, getting the money back to the LPs. If you want to spend time doing those four things, please let us sort out your front, middle, and back office data ecosystem.
Great plug there for Carta. One of the things that I found when I was in the funds industry is the industry was trying to solve for the digital investor experience. Different providers are at different levels. I've had a guest on talk about how printing, emailing, posting still. So where's Carta at on the digital investor experience?
For us, again, similar to how we build all our different software, how can we make sure that people have transparency, but also more importantly, control? So when we think about data and how LPs want to access it, it's about, well, they want control, they want transparency, but what does that actually mean for them? The data that sits on our platform, we don't view as our data, we view it as our client's data. So therefore, how we think about building the APIs, the integrations, the extractions, the portals itself is all from that ethos. It's the LP's data, so therefore let's build it how they want to see it. Now, some LPs will want APIs. Some LPs still want PDF statements. So we cater for all of that. And that's only because we think of it as not our data, it's our client's data.
Excellent, Edwin. We've covered a lot in this episode. So if our listeners were to take away one key message today, what would that be?
It would be, how can I help myself, but also my team adopt AI? If you don't help yourself, you can't help your team.
Good message. What about podcasts or YouTube channels that you follow around data, technology, or private equity? Is there one that you could recommend to the audience?
I would say there's one that I would recommend, but I would recommend this though, which is that there's so many out there, Ian, as you're very familiar with. I think again, using AI, there are AI agents that you can build quite easily that feed you all the information to summarize it in a way for competing views, because there are competing views about AI right now. And I think it's very disingenuous of me to say that, oh, follow this AI podcast or that one, because generally a lot of people follow certain things that's been generated by the algorithm based on what you watched before. But I think with some AI agents, you can feed in all the different podcasts. feed in views that are very similar to what you've already watched, but feed in other kind of podcasts, generate summaries, and really have a thought process that should look at all sides of the coin. Because unfortunately, there's the fearmongers out there about AI, then there's the really pro AI crew as well. There's a middle crowd as well. If you don't listen to all of them, I don't think you truly understand the power, but also, dare I say, some of the perils of AI.
I like that. And it gets you building using AI to generate useful summaries for yourself, and you learn about it at the same time. And then tell us two more things. One, where can people learn more about Carta? What's the website or other socials they can follow? And then also for yourself, what's your LinkedIn? Is there anywhere else that they can follow your journey and path as well?
For myself, Edwin Chan on LinkedIn, please follow me. I'd love to connect with you all. If you've got any comments on this podcast, I'd love to hear it from you directly. You can DM me directly. On Carta itself, our website is quite simple, carta.com. But I think for us, we have multiple channels, whether it's on LinkedIn, we have Instagram, we also have Twitter. Please follow us because on there, you'll find the latest features and the latest products that we're building for the ecosystem.
Excellent. Well, Edwin, thank you very much for joining on this episode. Found it very educational. I really appreciate you coming on the pod.
Thank you for having me, Iain. Thank you.
If you have an AI story from the funds industry and wish to share, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Iain Carey, IAIN CAREY.